sort of earn your path and everything, and I was making good impressions on people. But at this particular meeting, after I spoke up and introduced myself, a woman gets up in the audience, and there's somebody who's a high-ranking officer in the California Republican Party who's there presenting to the meeting, and she starts speaking up to the whole audience, to this person presenting, saying something along the lines of, "And tell me this: why is the California Republican Party not investing more in outreach to the black community? Why is the Republican Party not investing more in challenging people like Maxine Waters? Why is the Republican Party not putting dollars into black communities? Where is John Wood's check? Where is John Wood's check?" And listened to her say that, and I thought, John Wood could use a check. Now that I think about it, wouldn't be such a bad thing. And that individual, of course, was Shirley Husar. That is how Shirley and I met. And Shirley Shirley is Republican. Shirley is conservative. Hope you don't mind me saying so. But Shirley has been on the ground in the black community, fighting for her beliefs, her values, her convictions, and for the interests of the community a long time. We come at things from different angles sometimes, but Shirley always keeps it real, and that's what she's here to do today on the Better Angels podcast. So, Shirley, that's my introduction of you, but would you like to say something yourself about yourself, who you are, what you do, and what folks ought to know about you?
I can do that. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you so much for having me on the Better Angels. I think that we all should be angels. Angels are those that protect us. Angels are always there to make us know that we're not alone.
Preach.
We're living in times when we sometimes may feel alone, but we're not alone. Life is about contribution and reciprocity, and I'm so grateful to be on this platform. My name is Shirley Husar. I am the CEO of Urban Game Changers. Urban Game Changers is where we go into urban communities and we hold elected officials accountable as well as ourselves. We like to work with people who bring something to the table. We like to work with up-and-coming candidates who can be validated and who can bring change to California. California is on the break of so many different issues going on. It's unbelievable, from hepatitis A to typhus to measles to 6% African Americans left in this country, in the state. I call it a country because it feels like that. We feel like we're in a third world country when we see people be able to do things that American people can't do, but illegals and immigrants can. These are things that are hot buttons in my department, in my state, but Urban Game Changers is nationwide. We have 13 states that we are active in on the ground with active activists. And it's important that we know what's going on in their community and what they bring to the table, because every one of us are embarking upon different things.
Yeah, indeed. Now, and you did mention that Urban Game Changers is a national organization. How long has Urban Game Changers been around?
We've been around since 2011. You can go to urbangamechangers.com and learn more about us. We're getting ready to have an event, which we'd love to have you gentlemen come to. It is going to be in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We will be celebrating the 400 years of African Americans in this country. ADOS is the talk about for this year. Hashtag ADOS family, which is African Americans, descendants of slaves. These are people who contribute to this country and make great of it. In 1619, the word Dutchman brought those 20 men as commodity and collateral goods. And those 20 men later on evolved to who we are today. Black people are not immigrants. They're not illegal immigrants. The African Americans, the descendants of slaves, are just that. And they're still using commoditized goods today in privatized prisons and many other platforms. And so we're having that discussion. It will be at the Founders Inn Hotel, August the 21st through the 25th. And we would love to have you guys come out.
Beautiful.
I'm down.
Okay, awesome.
I'll be there.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thanks for putting
It's a commencement that President Trump actually signed. So, yeah, President Trump signed a commencement. We're working with the Park and Recs on this. So this is going to be a really big deal.
Indeed.
Yes.
So we're going to want to talk about President Trump, and we're going to want to talk about immigration, because for people who listen to your introduction right there, obviously that's an issue that you care about, and you have an opinion on that subject that some of our members will share and some of our members will not share. And so it'll be good for us to talk about that a little bit. But before we get to Trump, before we get to immigration, I do want to ask you about your attitude on something that's a bedrock concern for Better Angels. I mean, as you know, Better Angels is a bipartisan organization. And what we try to do is foster empathy and collaboration across the party divide and so forth, right? I mean, we come from the perspective that everybody has a different experience, everybody has a different journey to their political point of view. Facts are facts, but we all bring our own subjective interpretation to issues, and ultimately we want to rediscover that common American spirit that sort of keeps the civil society going. And something that I know about you and your work is that on the one hand, you're just as passionate, literally as passionate as anybody I've ever met in politics, right? And you are very committed when you get behind a cause, you stick to it, and you put your weight in it. Just the way anybody who's really serious about something does. But at the same time, I happen to know that even though you're a Republican, you and also Urban Game Changers has made it a practice of looking for common ground with folks on the other side of the aisle, on the Democratic side of the aisle, and working for the common interest where you can find points of agreement. And so I'm just wondering, I guess, okay, so two questions. Question number one, how do you approach the subject of bipartisan collaboration? When you're looking for candidates to work with, obviously you tend to work with a lot of Republicans, but I know that you also work with Democrats and independents and so forth. What are the points of agreement that you look for? That's question number one. And question number two, how much bipartisan cooperation do you see going on in the country, and why? Or in other words, why are we so divided right now as Americans? But go ahead and start with point number one first.
Absolutely. Urban Game Changers, we are not about Republican or Democrat. We are not about the ideology of your conservative, liberal, independent, or Green Party. What we do identify is that this country has been torn apart by administrations on both sides that are not working in the people's best interests. We have seen a global perspective become an international perspective on the grassroots and inner city points of view, where we have remittance, where money is being sent back from this country from people who are here legally and illegally. And this is the conversation that we're having as far as the community and urban communities. So when we talk with Urban Game Changers, I'm not going in trying to preach the Republican Party's message or the Democrat Party's message. I'm talking about the people's message. Good, every average day American people who are trying to pay their bills, trying to deal with the $6 a gallon situation in California, who are going downtown LA and seeing rat traps in City Hall because of typhus and the rodents that are affected with typhus. Good American people who are tired of seeing the streets bleached and stepping over people as if they're unhumane. These are the people I represent. These are the people that have concerns about legislation that is not addressing their everyday habitational living.
Okay, gotcha. And so you're looking for Democrats who share those essential basic concerns about people in their communities.
I'm looking for people. I'm not looking for Democrats. I'm not looking for Republicans. Mm-hmm. I think that's the problem right now. We're caught up on titles of, I'm a Democrat, so I have to do everything the Democrats say. I'm a Republican, I have to do everything the Democrats say. Thank God for President Trump.
Okay, so that gets...
And that leads into Trump, because what Trump has done is pulled back the veil of how these parties have played games on the American people, and that President Trump is saying, now that we've revealed what is going on in this country, we should never go back to where we were, to where we need to go.
Okay. Well, tell us, Ciaran, did you want to jump into something real quick?
Yeah, well, that was very interesting to hear, and I'm inspired by what you're doing in the community. I think you're in touch with the people, which is really what's most important. Because I think a lot of times in the media and on the podcast, we're talking to a lot of people who, talk about politics, but tend to do so from more of a media perspective or more from behind a keyboard than actually being out in the street. So I really appreciate that.
Shirley is not theoretical.
Yeah, now I see we're live on Instagram, so I better bring my A game right now. So I have a question. You mentioned President Trump and the direction we're heading in a country. What do you see as that direction? What do you think his vision is for where we should go forward?
Well, Mr. Trump has said that vision from the beginning. He wants to make America great again. I think the question is, what does that mean? Everyone's interpretation of being made great again is different. For some, for African Americans, many of them feel that they never were made great again. We're talking about reparations right now on the table from both sides, from Democrats and Republican sides, who agree and disagree with that.
Where do you fall on the reparations question?
I believe that African Americans who are descendants of slaves are entitled to reparations. I think reparations has already been given out to people. When we think about the chain migration, how you can bring a family member into this country You can bring them into this country because you had a family member here. You're getting a better life. Let me ask you a question. What does the word reparations mean to you?
I think it connotes repairing.
Okay.
And so,
What does it mean to you?
to me, I think it means giving resources to descendants of slaves in an effort to repair the historical injustice of slavery, which has continued to perpetuate itself through systems of inequality. So, what that actually looks like, I think, is a matter of debate, but I think so far in the 2020 campaign, at least, I think a number of the Democratic candidates have come out for reparations, at least in a theoretical way. I don't know that many of them have talked about what that would look like in practice. I don't know if President Trump has been asked directly about reparations, but my understanding is that
question.
the GOP generally has been opposed to reparations historically. And so I'd be curious to hear, what do reparations mean to you, and why do you think that the Democrats now are voicing more support than the Republicans have, at least in recent history?
To repair, to heal,
Mm-hmm.
to correct, to add value, and to leverage a nation of people is what African Americans need to be in at this point in history. We are constantly being leveraged against.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you can repair is through wealth,
Mm-hmm.
through money, through assets. But those assets have to be distributed to the right people. Those assets have to be understood, why they're being given to the right people and what for. Because when we use the word reparations, it always stirs up this animosity, this hatred, this jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
It stirs up conversation of unworthiness for black people when you say that word. I got a lot of venom when I say that word on my platform as a conservative black woman who supported Trump and who's been a Republican before the Trumpicans with the red hats were out there. And I'm getting a lot of heat for it. But I also know that my mother and my father are from the South. My mother's from Arkansas, my dad's from Louisiana, and they both passed on. But I can trace my ancestors back to 1810.
Mm-hmm.
So reparations is entitled to the people who contribute through the lineage
Mm-hmm.
of being in this country. And only those children of African American descent should be entitled to a specific reparations, because if you don't fall in those categories, there have been other money set aside for you. The Native Americans, the Jews, the Native Americans in 2017 did a deal with Trump where they're able to excavate oil off of their land, and they're able to get part of the money for their tribe, and the other part goes back to the government. That gives a person opportunity of leverage.
Mm-hmm.
When you have immigrants who come here saying, well, they're bringing money and they're bringing opportunity, and no, they're coming here and they're bringing their family members and they're learning off of you. And within black communities, for example, in Lexington Market, shout out to Baltimore people, you have Chinese people selling greens, yams, and chitlins. You have Chinese people in the black community and Korean people in the black community who are leveraging our talents and our skills and our foods and culture, learning them just to make money off of us and leveraging it back to them. Where when we try to do the exact same things, there are vices and government imposed products and programs that suppress us by empowering them.
It's interesting when you start talking to real people. You start recognizing the fact that folks who are not necessarily locked into the conventional kind of political narratives are not super predictable a lot of times with their points of view. And surely you're a great example of that, because here you are, black Republican who supported Donald Trump, right? Adamantly opposed to illegal immigration, adamantly in support of reparations, is what it sounds like to me.
That's correct.
And we're going to want to, I think, unpack a little bit of your points of view and so forth, because I can imagine that some people listening to you talking about illegal or undocumented immigration on the one hand, or some folks are going to respond to that by saying, well, I totally agree with what she's talking about, and other folks are going to say, well, wait a second, she's not recognizing all the good and all the value that immigrants of all varieties bring to the United States of America. And the emotion that goes into those differences of opinions makes it a very polarizing subject. I want to back up just a little bit so people understand a little bit more about where you're coming from with your own particular point of view.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit, first of all, you had a role within the Trump campaign, right? I remember you being very visible in the state of California during Trump's campaign. As a matter of fact, I think you were a delegate to the convention.
2016, I was the delegate for Donald Trump and the surrogate for the entire state of California.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what got you interested in supporting President Trump to begin with and what your experience was like on President Trump's campaign.
I decided to work under President Trump and for his administration all the way back to 2010 when I created a Facebook page saying California support Donald Trump.
In 2010?
In 2010.
Wow.
So in 2015, I was on Black Hollywood Live. And it's another podcast, YouTube channel that's here in Los Angeles. Shout out to Black Hollywood Live and my Black Hollywood Live people. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing because I told them then, I said Donald Trump would be president. And I, of course, if you guys remember 2015, 16, anyone who said Trump will be president got mocked, laughed at. I mean, literally, like that was the latest joke. Like, you know, you wanted to say a joke, Trump's going to be president.
I said it though. Just so you know, I wasn't even supporting Donald Trump, but I did say to people, I said if he gets in the race, I think he's going to win. But anyway.
Oh, good. Now everybody's claiming that they said yes. I have proof.
The day before the election, I thought.
The day before the
election, I thought he was going to lose.
I didn't know he wasn't going to lose, and we knew he was going to win. So why would I want to be on board with such a man? Because being a woman in business, I know it takes money, numbers, and numbers to leverage in life. Money, numbers, and power to leverage in life. Money, numbers, and a clear understanding and communication to leverage in life. Politicians who had been president, senators, vice presidents of organizations, commissioners, whatever title they've ever held when they end up running for president, never knew how to manage money well for me. Because all they did know was to ask you for money. He was a man who wasn't asking you for his money. He was asking you to say, let me give you my time to help correct a country that basically is a national corporation. America is a corporation that is out of control, that was being ran by people who had never been used to having money of that level. And I knew that in my heart, and the numbers that I've seen, that is personal, let's get out of the personal. I come from a numbers and money perspective. Here's a man that says, I want to be your president, and I'm going to correct some of the wrongs of things that have been done to this country. For example, when it comes to NAFTA, when it comes to the leveraging of giving every other country the opportunity of goods and trades with no reciprocity in return. All the deals that were made under the Obama administration, even some of the Bush administration, where we saw a lot of our givings to these countries, are allowing these countries to take from us or put into us, and we got nothing out of it. Good American people were being broken because of that. And we have a global society now because of that. And we don't have the manufacturers here. We don't have the construction properties here. We don't have the small businesses that should have been flourishing, as well as our intellectual rights and technology that were being ciphered and taken away and advantage from China. So they mocked President Obama. China did. Towards the end, as you notice that President Obama had to get on the back of the plane when he left China, when he was going to China, when he landed, because at that end of the game, no one respected this man of power. But when Trump got into office, people stood a little straighter. Their backs got a little fuller, and their pocketbooks got a little lighter, and we got a little bit more attention.
Now, I'm guessing my man Ciaran might have a little bit of a difference of perspective.
That's okay.
So, you know, Ciaran worked for Hillary, and he worked for Obama, and a very accomplished staffer and campaigner in his own right.
Good for him.
We've got a diversity of points of view here sitting around the table. I want to pick up on, okay, so you're talking about your support for Trump, and you're pointing out you're pointing out the situation where you're saying that internationally the United States of America is being taken advantage of by China. It's being taken advantage by foreign economies and people coming into the country in contradiction of American law. We have a massive, what you're calling a corporation. You're saying the United States of America essentially functions as a corporation, but we have people running the country who have no idea what to do with money and who have no idea about how business operates. And for all those reasons, Donald Trump, a CEO, a man with enormous personal wealth who didn't need anybody else's money, was the right person to step into that situation and sort of right the ship and so forth and start kind of fighting back against the exploitation of the American people. Am I getting that pretty close to
You
right?
are so good.
Okay, there we go.
So
There you
good.
go. Now there's also there's all sorts of points in that we can jump on, but I do want to get on the subject of immigration. Let me give it a quick preamble.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because you're black conservative, and in your case, Shirley, there are a lot of black conservatives, and I say this being black conservative, black Republican myself. There are a lot of black conservatives who part of what appeals to them about conservatism is the fact that they feel like it's more colorblind than the sort of identity politics, liberalism or progressivism on the left and so forth. A lot of black Republicans sort of want to de-emphasize, kind of de-emphasize the focus on race in our politics altogether. But you really capitalize the B in black Republican or black conservative. That's what I
Absolutely.
notice. And I wanted to highlight that fact because when I was running for office, so South Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles, the community you and I are inhabitants of, or related to. We in South LA, you've got a black community that has changed a lot over the years and been impacted by a variety of factors, including immigration, right? So if you go back some decades, you'll find that black people in LA, and these are just economic facts. They tended to dominate the service industry. They tended to dominate the agricultural industry. They tended to be very highly represented in manufacturing. And over the course of time, demographic changes saw to it that, you have suddenly over the course of the 60s and the 70s, many more people from Latin America coming in and suddenly being represented in the service industry and in the agricultural sector. And meanwhile, manufacturing jobs went to China and so forth. And so I think all of that contributed to a situation where when I was running for Congress, I would meet black people, many of them who became Republicans based on their feelings about the issue of immigration, but some who were still Democrats who would nevertheless say to me that they were extremely concerned about the issue of illegal or undocumented immigration. So I'm just putting that out there just to let folks know who may not be as familiar with the way a lot of black people feel about this issue, even many black Democrats, that Shirley's not coming from another planet in terms of how she's looking at this issue. Predominantly black communities have shifted in a way over time in certain areas, particularly in Los Angeles, as a result of immigration, which, for better or for worse, has had real consequences for the composition of
It's not for better.
black communities.
It's not for better at all.
Well, I think that we know that's what that's where Shirley Husar is going to come from on this point.
Well, it's facts. It's not even about how I come from it. When you have 80 to 85% people homeless downtown LA, when you see illegal immigrants are able to set up market stores, El Salvadorians, Chinese, Brazilian, Arabian, Saudi Arabian, all these people are coming here. They all come tell you, I got a story, I got to tell you my babies, and da-da-da-da. We hear all your stories. In the meantime, good American people, in particular African American people, are displaced. That is factual. That number is in place. The numbers tell you, the areas tell you that. The visualization of that tells you that. It has nothing to do with me personally. It's fact.
But let me ask you this question. So I'm putting all that context on the table, right? To say that folks have genuine reasons, not just white folks in the Rust Belt who may have voted for Donald Trump, but also many African Americans in communities that are closer to the border in particular, right? Have reasons to be skeptical about a more sort of open kind of immigration policy, right? Nevertheless, you said that black people are not immigrants, they're descendants of slaves, and I hear you on that, right? But the United States of America, more broadly speaking, is a country of immigrants, right? I mean, pretty much every other group that you can name has come here in an immigrant sort of capacity. I grew up next to Latinos, next to Asians, next to people from all parts of the world, from all walks of life. And so
I did too.
Yeah, learned a lot from folks of all different cultures. Feel personally enriched. I mean, I couldn't even imagine a Los Angeles that didn't have kind of like a substantial kind of Latino influence both in
Right.
food and music and all
Right.
of these.
But how
different
much
things.
do they know your
So
culture
isn't-
other than
But-
your
but-
music and your women?
I
I mean, how much desire do they really want to know you? They don't want to know you.
Well,
Can I jump in
Sure,
with
Okay.
a quick concern?
sure.
go for it.
So I get concerned by these kind of sweeping generalizations based on race and how people look. So I just wonder when you say, they're like this, they're like that, are you referring to them as a group of people, or you're talking about certain individuals in the community that you've experienced?
Well, I never said they, them. I've made it clear. I said the Chinese.
Okay.
I'll say Armenian. I said Chinese.
But you're referring to a whole group of people and
I'm
painting
de-
them with
I'm-
a broad
I'm-
brush
I'm
in terms of
speaking
the
of a group of
characteristics that
people.
you're ascribing to them.
I'm speaking of a group of people
Mm-hmm.
who have come into my community
Mm-hmm.
because California is situated in a bubble. It's in a
Mhm.
bubble perspective. If you go to a Century City and you go to Century City Mall, it is a total different mall than the Crenshaw Mall because we live in quandaries in this state. This state is a bad version of Epcot. If you've ever been to Epcot, I've been to Epcot,
I've
where
not
you
been
have
to Epcot.
different countries set up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what California has become, the template and the staple of that. So I'm not saying it from a them perspective. I can tell you there's an area in California called Little Chinatown, Little Korean Town.
Mhm.
Now I'm older than you, and I would tell you there was never that. We always had Little Chinatown, yeah, but we never had it where it's to the point now that is very clear. Hey, if you want some Thai food, you can go to Little Thailand, or if you want some Brazilian food, you can go to Little Brasilia. We've got these areas where these people don't assimilate
Mm-hmm.
and they don't associate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am a descendant of slaves. What does that mean? That means that I can trace my lineage back to before the emancipation, before 1865.
Mm-hmm.
The people of my tribe of African American descent who came as commodity, those people are what we're talking about as far as reparations.
Mm-hmm.
As far as illegals and illegal immigrants, the word illegals alone should have a red flag, but it has not been red flagged anymore. The word illegal has become normalized, but the word a black man has become subhuman and unkind and continues to be that way, and that is not right.
So there's a whole lot of things that are wrapped into the description that you just gave. I wanted to make this.
Did I
Point
answer?
of- point
I
of-
don't mean to pivot, John.
Okay,
Did I
go.
answer your question? I just don't. I want to really make you have an understanding with you. And you don't have to agree, but at least we can come to some understanding.
No, I understand what you're saying. I was just voicing the concern that kind of like racialized generalizations, I think, are not always accurate.
But I'm not racialized generalizing. I've made it very specific and very clear. Immigrants, illegal immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
should never be in the same category as African American descendant of slaves. I'm neither of those two things. And I think that you need to understand that. You have to understand that every Negro is not kinfolk. All skin folks ain't kinfolks. You would not go to, no, true, because when we talk about Kamala, or whatever her name is, Harris, who eat greens and went to a black university, everybody's saying she's black American. Well, she's Jamaican and she is Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And she's from India descent. Matter of fact, her sister never says she's that, but she claims to be that. And for a descendant of slave, that's a crucial disgrace, and it's a disrespect to my culture and my tribe of people. If I go to a Spaniard, a person from Spain, and I say, you're a Mexican,
Mm-hmm.
they are highly offended by that. I'm not Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
So identity politics or generalizations, that's one thing you will learn I don't do.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is make it clear of what kind of Negro I am
Mm-hmm.
for those who are in my midst.
So you put a lot of things on the table. I do want to pick up on one thread because I do think that you said something along the lines of with respect to Latinos in Los Angeles and so forth. You said, but how much do they know about your culture aside from, I think you said from
Well, they love our music, they love our men, and they love our
But see, you
life.
are saying they and
we love their
them.
music.
Well,
and
no,
their-
You
and
know what I'm
their-
saying?
But
They
you love
love
their
our
music and
women.
their
But you're not
They
listening.
love our
But
men.
you're not
That's
listening.
a broad generalization.
No.
Men.
And then I addressed
Referring to Latinos.
that's right. So I'm right in line with what I'm saying with. We meaning they meaning the Latinos.
Well, let's
Right,
well,
which is
let's-
a generalization of saying
No,
Latinos
that's-
like this.
You're misinterpreting that.
How so?
Because he said Latinos, and I said they, and I'm in conjunction with them.
Right.
If it was another group, I would have said, okay, yeah, the Chinese. Would it help you better if I said the Latinos?
Latinos.
Yeah, but I'm saying
Latinos
you're
a general
saying
term, right?
It's a general term. You're saying Latinos.
I'm
like
not using
this.
a general term. That's
You're
semantics.
describing
You're
specific
doing
preferences
semantics.
to a group of people.
Well, we don't have to
Anyway.
have to get too hung up on the terminology. The point I was going to make is related to what you were saying, though, in as much as in this. So, one of my best friends in the whole world, this guy named Jose, right? And Jose's family came to this country. I do not think that they originally came with documentation. Originally, at least,
Right.
They might have documentation now and so forth. But they live in a house which they've built up to a beautiful thing. They run a business which has employed people and added value to the
Right.
community. They've raised a beautiful family of young people who have gone to school, who've gone out to be productive citizens and so forth. I went after my buddy Jose's first child was born. I went to their house, right, and grandparents' house, and a lot of folks who were there, largely Mexican, right, and Jose's mother came up to me. And she made a point to come up to me because I'm one of the only non-Latinos there, and one of the only perhaps people who was at least of a certain age. While I'm on the younger side, but a lot of folks there were born in Mexico or born in Latin America. And she pointed out to me something that she had. They're gardeners and landscapers, right? So they have
Right.
a pot with the plant there, and it's got two flags sticking out of it. It's
Okay.
got a Mexican flag and an American flag.
Right.
And she says to me her nieto es un mexicano, pero él es un americano también. In other words, he's Mexican, but he's American as well, right?
Right.
And she felt like it was very important to tell me that that's why we have the American flag here. We've got our Mexican flag to sort of celebrate the heritage that we come from, that my grandson has come from, right? But the American flag represents who he is today and so forth. And so I put that to you because, one, when I hear a story like that, I say, that's an American story, right? Because obviously, as descendants of African slaves and so forth, we have a little bit of a different ancestral experience, right? That falls outside the immigrant category. I do agree with that. But for Americans in general, people have been telling that story for generation after generation after generation. So I understand the issue of illegal immigration can be set aside as distinct. But I just want to clarify your views on immigration in general. Whether you think immigration in general is a bad thing, or if it's just purely a context of, we need to enforce the law. Because when I hear a story like that told by my Mexican best friend's grandmother about how her grandson, yes, he's a Mexican, but he's also an American, and that's the identity that they are, setting up for him going forward. I hear that, and I hear the stories of people from Ireland, from Italy, and from England, and from China and Nigeria and so on and so forth, going all the way back to the beginning of this country's founding. And I think that's a beautiful tradition, that melting pot tradition. And I'm just wondering what you feel about that aspect of American history.
So I'm going to share my perspective of the Latino community from my perspective of being raised in Los Angeles and Latinos. Okay, first of all, I had Latino family members, meaning adopted. I was my babysitter who babysitted me when I was a little girl. She's Hispanic. She's an older woman, moving in her 70s. She's still existing. I know her whole family. Shout out to them. And they love me and I love them. So I'm very protective of that part of my family and the Latino culture. But then you have the Latinos, you have the immigrants, and you have another generation. The generation before were taught not to even learn Spanish. There was a generation, and I can't speak. I am not Latino. I have no Latin in me. So I can't speak from their perspective. I can speak from a perspective of someone that grew up with them. So that's where I'm coming from. So let me clarify that, because I'm really meticulous about people who speak for another people's culture, people when you ain't there. I call them transracial, but that's a whole nother conversation. All these people always talk like they speak for black people and they ain't even black. So I'm not going to do that. But what I will tell you is there was a generation of Latinos that were raised at a time in history where their parents migrated here legally, and they wanted them to acclimate. They wanted them to learn English and not learn Spanish. They did not want them to be disrespectful to their culture, but they truly wanted them to be Americans. And that is why you saw at many points in time, you'll meet Mexicans, Americans that don't speak Spanish. You'll go, I don't speak Spanish. My grandparents did, my parents did, but they never taught it to me. Now you have immigrants who come here, who have a different perspective of their stand in Mexico because they get benefits of being an immigrant versus just as an everything that everybody else gets as an American. So the EB2, the EB3, these visas that they come here on a work visa have had these extended life forces that have caused them not to be fully acclimated into the American system. And that has been a problem for Americans. People who have extended their visas and their green cards and allowed them to expire, and there's no responsibility to that. There's no kickback of saying, okay, we've had enough of this. Now you need to do your part. Either jump the fence and do everything that's right that we have in place in this country, or jump the fence and go back to where you came from. So because those rules have not been enforced of law that's already in place that have not been enforced, it's been detrimental towards American and specifically African American communities, because when these poor, impoverished people come here, they come to our communities first.
So it sounds like part of what you're saying is that your issue with, or one of your issues with American immigration law, or maybe perhaps the inconsistent enforcement of law, is the fact that it does not emphasize the importance of assimilation and cultural assimilation.
No.
So
And
it sounded like you were saying a previous generation of Latino immigrants were more easily assimilated into the American sort of culture, or do I have that wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a previous culture of Latinos that are out there that never learned Spanish because their parents didn't want them to learn Spanish. They wanted them to become acclimated into the American system. But the American system, specifically in California, because California is a special breed of people. And when you hear people from all around the other country going, man, California, y'all got a lot going on out there, they're not lying, because California believes in this rainbow coalition of cultures come here, but they don't assimilate. Again, it's like a bad patchwork, like you had a dress with all these different colors and it didn't blend together. It just stands out on its own.
It's interesting to think about California as unique, because in my experience, I grew up in New York City. At least insofar as the relationships I had, I think assimilation was sort of a hallmark of the immigration in my generation. As opposed to, I also spent time in France, where there is very little assimilation, and that can create a lot of cultural conflict in terms of what does it mean to be French. And so it's interesting to think about, different people's experiences in different communities. And I had never heard that in Los Angeles, people thought that certain communities didn't assimilate that much.
They don't. It's easy to be seen when you drive throughout Los Angeles. You go up Wilshire, you go off Vermont or Western or Normandy. When you see other cultures' names written on the wall and not yours, meaning American, nothing in English, when they don't want to speak it, is their way of saying, well, why are you even in this community?
Right.
It was interesting because there was a regulation issues over the fire department going in there saying, we don't know where this fire is at because the writing on the building is not in English. Is that not true, that you see things through in California, not in English?
Karen's kind of a newcomer to California.
No, I mean,
certainly seen graffiti in all sorts of languages.
No, not graffiti. I'm talking about professional businesses with Arab writings on their business and not English. Professional businesses with Korean writings as the name of their business. Chinese. So you Lebanese.
So you don't like the idea of there being a Koreatown or a Chinatown?
I don't support all that. No, I think there should just be California. And I think if you have a business, you should have your business in English, and you should be open to all cultures coming to be able to use your business. And they'll say, oh, yes, we want you here. But they're also say one thing, but they're doing another. When you put your business with Arabic writing or Chinese writing or Hispanic writing on the walls with no English, that way you're saying we want to marginalize and we only want our people here. That's what you're really saying.
It's pretty fascinating because you and I we both live in multicultural families. You don't mind me pointing that out, right? I mean, your children are biracial.
That's correct.
Right. Which I am as well, and like yourself, I didn't know about the sort of the adopted Latino parts of your family and so forth. But I've got cousins who are Mexican or who are half Mexican and half Belizean and half Brazilian and so on and so forth. And me, I guess, being a certain complexion back when I used to have long hair and so forth, I was one of those kids who kind of got mistaken for everybody, right? People would think I was Puerto Rican and Dominican. People would think I was, Middle Eastern, this,
Yes.
that, or the other,
Right.
And so, look, obviously I'm African American. I'm African American and I'm Anglo American and so forth. That is my quote, racial background. I do believe that race is not ultimate. I think it's more of a social construct than a biological thing, but it does have real implications for society, right? So I grew up in this multicultural melting pot, kind of free though to kind of go back and forth the different sides of it a little bit. And for me, that was just that multiculturalism was kind of part of the waters that I swam in growing up. But at the same time, I do, for myself, I do experience something of this tension in thinking that I think that I'm definitely a little bit more kind of expansive than yourself, Shirley, in as much as, I like going to Chinatown, I like going to Koreatown, I like being able to sort of look at this window at other cultures that exist in our midst and sort of take value from that and to sort of
I do too, but not when and not at my expense, not at my expense of extinction, not at my extinction.
I'm not arguing
my
that,
people
but
are
let
on
me-
the verge of
let me-
extinction.
let me make
our culture. How many soul food restaurants do you go to?
Let me make the
When's
point.
the last time you went to a soul food restaurant?
I love M&M's.
No, there is no more M&M's. They closed that one. That's closed down. Doolin is the only one on Crenshaw Boulevard.
I am a little upset that they closed.
The Doolin is
I
one
grew up
of
eating M&M's, catfish, and so
Okay,
forth.
well, they're
But let me
not
just
here
make the
anymore.
point because I've got.
But Doolin's is great. It's still there.
But let me just make the point because I do believe that there needs to be something of an overarching kind of American identity, right? Which has room within it for like the different places that we come from culturally, but that ultimately provides us with kind of a common framework for sort of, relating to each other on a cultural level and on a values level and so forth. And so from that point of view, for instance, I'm not really super opposed to the idea of, say, English being the official language of the United States. Like that's something that I kind of, agree with, or at least am sympathetic towards as a possible policy thing. But again, but that also exists alongside the truth that I do believe that the country is historically a country that wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for a phenomenon of immigration. And so when I listen to you explain your perspective, I totally get it. And I hear what you're saying about there having been this split where black folks looked at their communities, particularly in LA and so forth, and saw them changing over time in a way that was to the detriment economically and politically even of folks in the black community. And, as a person who, I'm more conservative and so forth, but just as a person just in the community, like I recognize that history. I recognize it's got consequences for today as many other things do. But black folks, particularly my generation and younger and so forth, we've grown up alongside our Latino brothers and sisters, right? But obviously, we come from.
But let me say this too:
our families are joined together.
I have two.
Oftentimes, our friendships, our co-workers, colleagues, and so on. So I'm just saying, don't we need to kind of find a way to pursue an optimal future? First of all, recognizing the fact that we got to do that together, right, across racial lines, but saying that doesn't mean we can't be smart about immigration policy. We can't pass laws that actually.
John, I hear what you're saying. Let me say this to you.
Okay.
We've done that. We always talk about black and brown, black and brown. Brown don't say black. We say black and brown, but brown does not say black. Let me make this clear to you. Number one.
I don't know.
Number two. No, I know that.
I mean, it's a generalization, right?
No, it's not no generalizations. This is fact. Because when we had Trayvon Martin, when we've had people who were shot in the back, when we had what happened over to Stephen Clark up in Sacramento, where were the brown people? Where were the Latinos marching? Just maybe a few handful march with us when our people are shot in the back, shot in stores, police chasing us down for no just reason, pulled over, shot with your child in the car. Where is the Latino community for that? Where are the Chinese community for that? We have always been there for everybody else, and we're done. African American descendants of slaves, African Americans who are tired of being used and ostracized and used as a platform based on our pain and our anguish and our civil rights, based on legislation that was put in place for us and not everybody else. And everybody else rides off of us and want to put us with the LGBTQ community and want to emasculate the black man and then want to criticize us if we work outside of our own culture, meaning people. Yes, I was married to a white man. I am not married now. And we're still good friends and we still work together. And my grandmother was half white, which people don't know. I have 8.3% white in me.
Did you do the 23andMe?
I've done my DNA. I've done my lineage. Do you know your lineage? I always tell people, do you know your lineage? Lineage is where you recognize how you're descendants of slave, not your DNA. Your DNA recognizes your chromosomes of what's comprised of. No one is of one thing. There are a lot of white people in America who have a Negro in their tree, including maybe the white people at this table here, because they don't know. No, I tell you, look, go to Ancestry on YouTube and look up ragtimes. And there was a gentleman that they interviewed who was white, who sat in a room with black people, and he thought he was a slave owner. He didn't realize he had two black people on both sides that was mulatto. There was black, white, and mulattoes. And then in 1910, the Census Bureau changed mulatto to white. So white people were mulatto, which meant they had black in them. We have always cross-pollinated our people. So when black people say, yeah, we've always cross-pollinated our people. How do you think they appropriated and made slaves how they made them? They had sex with their slaves. So, we bred them. They bred us. They birthed us. We birthed their babies. We gave our breasts to these white children who, when we were slaves, and the things that go on in this country. We cooked foods. We did a lot back then, and today we still do. So when you talk about I'm going to go back to the Latino community, because I'm getting the impression that you guys making it seem like I'm attacking Latinos, which I'm not. I have a lot of Latino family. There's a lot of Latinos who support Trump. But there is a generation of Latinos, I'm telling you, that are Mexican Americans who do not speak any Spanish due to the part of their families that came prior to them in this country wanted them to acclimate a different way.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the here's what I feel when I hear you speaking, because I there's a lot that you're saying, and me knowing you personally, knowing where you come from, and so forth. There's all sorts of point at which I'm like, I sympathize with Shirley on X, Y, Z, 1, 2, and 3, right? And all sorts of different things here. But I do think that, and actually, let me speak a little bit to the black experience and so forth, and the way, now I'm going to make a big generalization here, right? But the way a lot of black folks feel about white folks, and particularly like white conservatives and so forth.
Right.
And a lot of white people who supported Trump. A lot of black people feel like, one, white America, and there's no broader, more unfair or generalizational term than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But white America has been taking advantage of black America, not just from slavery, but right on into the present day, that we have not made the types of racial progress that people like to pretend that we made after Dr. King, the civil rights movement, and so forth. And that if you look at all these phenomenons of institutional and structural racism, this, that, and the third, that black people are still being fed from the preschool to prison pipeline into basically forced labor camps through mass incarceration. We get out, we can't get a job and so forth because we've got a felony on our record that we shouldn't have had in the first place, can't get hired. And suddenly we're in this endless cycle of exploitation by the system, so on and so forth. And I meet black people who feel like that systemic reality. And I'm not saying anything about the accuracy of that description here, but I'm just saying that this is the reality that people perceive and so forth.
No, I understand.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of black folks feel like you look at that reality, and it just shows that you can't work alongside or collaborate with, a lot of white folks in general, and a lot of white conservatives in particular, particularly a lot of Trump voters and so forth, because they'll say that these are the people whose attitudes support the policymakers that are perpetuating a system of exploitation. And, in fairness, a lot of black folks who would say that would also say similar things about a lot of Democrats as well. But, my advice to them is that, first of all, I have all sorts of issues with that analysis while still believing that it's definitely rooted in some kernels of truth in terms of the way history has set up things for the black community now. We don't have time to get into all the complexity. But I try and tell people, I was like, look, first of all, you got to recognize these white folks as human beings just like you, right? Mm-hmm. And I speak biographically because white folks is me, right? I'm white folk so in my own real way because my dad is white and so forth, right? So I have that understanding and so forth. I try to make the point that, if we get hung up on the pain and injustice of the past in a way that keeps us from being able to recognize the fact that the only way we can really kind of put together a future that works optimally is by trying to find common ground with people with whom we have maybe some historic kind of differences and so forth, we're going to be lost because we got to live with each other regardless. Unless we're talking about civil war or something like that, which nobody want, right? Which nobody should want. And so that's something that I tell to a lot of, particularly black folks on the left who are struggling with this idea of finding empathy and collaboration with white people on the right. That there's human goodness in white America and conservative America, and that there's the possibility for us to connect on a plane of this sort of shared humanity, to be able to say, okay, we recognize the fact that as human beings we have more in common than we're willing to admit many times. So let's see how far we can push that in terms of political common ground. I would say the same thing to you, just to round it off. I would say the same thing to you with respect to the Latino communities in Los Angeles, with respect to the immigrant populations and so forth, who we spend so much time here talking about, that there is real reason to be skeptical and upset and not too dang happy about immigration policy up to this point in time, and to say it's still problematic in all sorts of ways. But I feel like we've got to work together to figure out how we can make things better in the here and now in a way that works for everybody, while not sacrificing the interests of Black Americans and native-born Americans. And to me, that is the objective right there. And I really want to know that Shirley Husar shares that basic sort of objective, and we can work out the details,
and I think those details do need to be worked out. Look, humanitarian and good feeling and loving, everything you said is wonderful, but it makes no sense to me. And I'm going to tell you why it makes no sense to me, because it takes policy and legislation and people in power and donors and wealthy people and banks to change a nation of people. Because that's what it comes down to.
But you got to create a coalition to make that happen, right?
Nope. Wells Fargo created $1.5 billion to help the Latino community in 2015 under President Obama. Mm-hmm. And that $1.5 billion was very specific in saying that it's going to give it towards the Hispanic community, towards jobs, towards houses, towards the advancement of their people. Mm-hmm. And it said this money has been set aside. It's very specific. You guys can look it up online. Wells Fargo says, we want to advance these people in this country. On top of Wells Fargo went through a lawsuit of helping illegal immigrants get loans and get cars, where they have made it so detriment for Black people. Now, people say, what do they do for Black people? Well, I guess because of all the heat in 2015, 2017, they decided to say, we're going to go and give us $60 billion. They're going to give the Black people $60 billion, but they gave the Latinos $125 billion. And you see that because you don't see them selling on the streets anymore. You see all the new cars where Toyota and Hondas allegedly have special deals for them, because those are the two dominating cars in the state of California versus where we used to have other cars in this state more dominant. You don't see as many Fords or Cadillacs or GMCs or Dodges as you do Hondas and Toyotas driven by the Latino community. So I'm just telling you facts. Look, the Democrats have basically tried to control and dominate. The reason why the Democrats are talking about reparations is because all they want is the Black vote. Mm-hmm. These same legislators have been in office for 20, 30, 40 years. They never talked about reparations. Mm-hmm. But yet now they're talking about reparations. I think that Hillary Clinton, I think that Obama, I think the Clinton administration, and I think anyone that is part of the Democrat Party, including the Bernie Sanders people that want to continue to talk about socialists, do not care about descendants of slaves. They have this globalist mindset that have been very dominant and harsh and horrible to the Black community. For example, you have the Clinton administration that created the three strikes you're outlaw. The Clinton, I'm going to finish because John went for a while. You're going to hear me talk out. The Clinton administration.
Ciaran has kind of been on the short end of the stick.
I understand, but you should have cut John off and took your time, because I'm going to put mine in as a guest. I will tell you, the Clinton administration have been the most detrimental, most harshest, the most terrible thing that could have ever happened to the Black community when it comes to mass incarceration. And thank God for this administration that's trying to revert the corrections of the wrong regarding the judicial system and what's going on, what's in prison with mass incarceration. But I would tell you that was under the Clinton administration.
Okay,
the Clinton administration also said that Black people were predators. Hillary Clinton said we were predators, and we are more than predators. We're more than being treated subhuman, which we got from her administration. And Obama rode right on that same train, and all he cared about was immigrants and the LGBT community.
Okay, I hear you. Ciaran, go ahead and jump in.
So when you say anyone in the Democratic Party doesn't care about reparations...
No. I said the welfare of African Americans in this country, because you can take the word reparations
But what
that's not being implemented because it's based by law. It's based on legislation. They've never pushed any legislation before.
But
Why now?
I'm saying when you say anyone in the Democratic
No,
Party,
they've never talked about reparations to the point that it was being executed to this level. There have been many bills in the past put on the past from some of the older people, but they've never really forced the issue as they're doing now because they know that they're losing
It's
black
just now
people to
mainstream,
Trump.
is what you're saying. You're saying it's just now mainstream.
It's more mainstream now, and more people are talking about it, even in the media. Look how we're talking about it. But
I'm
nobody
just
was.
saying that I think it's unfair to say anyone in the Democratic Party because then
Why is it unfair? What have Democrats done for blacks
I'm
right
in
now?
the Democratic Party.
Oh, I'm sorry for you, but what have you done for
So
black
I think
people?
it's unfair to say that anyone in the Democratic Party doesn't care about the welfare of any other group.
No, I'm not talking about other groups. I'm talking about black people. See how you're pivoting away from the subject
No,
matter?
but you're
I'm
saying
talking about
anyone
descendants of
in the
slaves.
Democratic Party.
Don't
I'm in
care.
the Democratic Party.
So yeah, good for you. What? What does that
So
mean
I'm
to
saying
me?
you're painting a broad brush of
No,
anyone in the
I'm painting
Democratic
a true
Party.
blush. A
Shirley,
true brush.
Shirley, well, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So they're saying that nobody in the Democratic Party cares about
Nobody
black
in the
people, or
Democratic Party has
are you
stopped-
saying that the Democratic leadership,
Look, the
on
leadership-
a high level has not been conservative?
What has the
with black
Democrat
people?
Party
That's two
done?
different things.
What if we look at the Democratic Party from an urban perspective? The legislators on the Democratic Party in Detroit have put more time in other cultures and acclimating and helping them in their community. When we had the whole big turnover from the housing department, when black people were losing their homes, where was the Democratic Party then? When black people are homeless in downtown LA, where are the Democratic Party there?
So
And because the Democrats, we are a super majority Democrat state in California. California is a super, I'm giving you facts, legislation, and laws. Had nothing to do with personal if you like Democrats or Republicans. I personally don't care for them. That's me personally. I don't think anyone part of the Democrat Party is helping us do anything moving forward. Do I have Democrat friends? Absolutely. Do I have Democrats family members? Absolutely. Do we have the same ideology viewpoint? No. On some perspective. But one thing I will make it clear, we are black first.
Shirley Husar, ladies and gentlemen, Shirley Husar, we are at about the top of the hour, about the bottom of our hour. Shirley, I don't think we're going to be able to resolve all the controversies and issues that you brought to bear in this conversation here. All that means is that we'll have to look for time for round two. Sometime, I'm guessing Ciaran's got plenty left on the table.
I love Ciaran. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk more to Ciaran. That little pretty man over here.
Oh, thank you.
He's definitely a pretty man. He's definitely a pretty man.
We gotta run it back.
We gotta run it back. We gotta run it back. Let me just say,
I wanted to talk more about Trump too.
Yeah, that, we barely even got into it. We kind of
Do you have
got
any
into it.
concerns about Trump's rhetoric?
Nope.
What about the whole birther movement with Obama saying he was born in Kenya?
Oh, you gonna go back all the way back?
I mean, we'd have to do it.
That's how he got his rise
So
in
let me ask.
politics.
We can't do this in 45 seconds.
What does that have to do with now? Why can't we just talk about now?
Tune in next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, follow Shirley Husar, Urban Game Changers. Can I do my closing?
Okay, shout out Urban Game Changers.
UrbanGameChangers.com. Make sure you join UrbanGameChangers.com. Follow me at ShirleyHusar.com. Gmail me at ShirleyHusar@gmail.com. HUSAR. Please look forward to our event where we will be celebrating the commencement of African Americans in this country. It will be at the Founders Inn Hotel, August the 21st through the 25th. We would love to talk to those who have normal conversation, no matter what party you're with, that we can have critical thinkers at the table to what is the fate of the African American descendants of the slaves. Hashtag ADOS. Shout out to my family and to everyone who continues to support our team.
There you
Amen.
go, and there we go. Let me just take the last word as a matter of executive privilege. Shirley, you know I love you, and I believe that if we are going to be able to make the type of progress that doesn't get sabotaged by the other side in the next election, whether we're talking about race or party, we need to recognize the fact that everybody is in this ship together, and if we don't sail it together, we're going to sink it.
Come on
together.
now, preach.
And so, but Shirley, maybe we can find, maybe we can get on the same wavelength next time around. I'm looking forward to it. All right, everybody. Better
Thank you
Angels
so much.
Podcast. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Shout out.
You know what's crazy is that my family is Italian, and they were given their family crest during the Crusades in the 1200s. I'm Latino. I'm Latino. Because Italians, actually, the term Latino is European.
Right.
It comes from Roman Catholic. And when we use the term Latino to identify with Mexican Americans, that might not be the case, because if they're not Catholic, some of them, most of them are, they're really not Latino. Latino is a term we misrepresent in the United States of America.
Well, that is
just
true,
classically.
Right, yeah.
Because actually the Italians are more Latino. French is Latino. Spanish is Latino. Malta is Latino. It's a southwest origin of Roman Catholic And because my family got their crest in 1200s, because my family's from the small town of Lucca in the boot, it's just one of those words that drives me crazy because everybody wants to call every Mexican a Latino and they're not.
Well, you know, it's funny. I mean, I was aware that Latin had a certain, geographical relationship in Europe, Spain, France, and Italy, and decidedly not Germany and not, Great
It's
Britain
romance.
and so forth.
It's a romance
Right,
kind
exactly.
of reality.
But I guess I didn't really realize. I mean, I'm familiar with Latin as a language that was spoken, preserved within the Catholic Church and so forth. But I didn't realize that it was a specifically religious kind of connotation.
I think that would be a good show for you guys, though. Just kind of to just break that down.
Mm-hmm.
There's a breakdown of understanding people's culture, understanding their inherited rights, and what he just shared was beautiful, which was absolutely on point.
And then I also grew up as a white man, as the only token white man in mostly black neighborhoods like Newburgh, New York, Bronx, East Palo Alto, East Menlo Park. For me personally, I was always the out kid of the sort of more black stronghold community and a little bit of brown. But, as being the token white dude, it was always a struggle for me because I had to be accepted. I had to be kind of, had to fight battles that I didn't even want to be a part of. And in this business that I represent right now, just to be a white man in the world of color, I represent less white people in this business and more people of color in this business, giving people of color, black primarily, an opportunity to express themselves and put their community in motion. And I feel really blessed for that opportunity because, quite frankly, that's a very important thing for me personally.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I think the key thing is that we all are able to know where our passions are, and that we're able to explain them to each other and have critical thinking, even if we don't agree.
Of course.
I think that's the biggest problem right there. I mean, I grew up with Latinos, so the Latin community and experience that I have was a little different than what I see today. My Latin family loved me, and I love them, and I love the people who support Trump. But I had a Latin family before Trump was even around. But
What's interesting about this community too, being so close to Ladera Heights, being so close to Baldwin, is interesting because at least my history lesson has taught me that, Los Angeles kind of called out to Southern black communities to come to Los Angeles in the 40s and the 50s to become able to acquire property, which is equity. And what we see classically in like, I love Baldwin. I love Ladera. I wish I could afford it. I'm not going to be able to buy a house in Ladera because they just continue to pass that equity down to family members rather than put those homes on the market. And that's mostly due to the racism that we have in the banking system, right? Because bank loans are not afforded to brown and black people easily. There's a lot more work that has to happen to be able to access those loans, and that's very unfortunate.
But for immigrants, the loans are much more obtainable. For immigrants and illegal immigrants, they are. Look, in the black community right now, what they're encountering upon, especially in East LA, where there was once at one time more African Americans, is these white buses driving through our communities that are tinted and dark, because the Chinese communities have abruptly walked on these on older black people neighborhoods, knocked on their doors saying, "I'll pay you cash to move." Because they want a community to take them over. How do
you feel about Nipsey? Because Nipsey was not, his family was not from there, right?
Right.
And they came in.
I celebrated Nipsey on my page. I got criticized for that as well. Nipsey was trying to do good. He was a capitalist.
Well,
again, I'm not talking about Republican or Democrat. I'm talking about being a capitalist so that you can be a contributor to the community and make good by it.
Right. As a moderate Democrat, I find it very difficult because I feel like I'm without a party to some extent because I'm not a far lefter. And I am a capitalist. When I listen to some of these younger, I'm 43 too. So when I listen to some of these younger kids just talking about wanting free stuff, I go, baby, this ain't free. I started building businesses when I was 14, never graduated high school, never graduated college.
Come on, man.
And I basically have built everything I've ever had in my life. And I put my money where my mouth is. And I continue to do that. But, I just don't feel like...
But you have the entitlement generation. That's a whole different mindset than maybe you or I have had, or how we were raised.
I was out of the house when I was 16.
What is your take on Proposition 13? Because my question is this: the Democrats, being a supermajority, are going to eventually get rid of Proposition 13. And that's going to affect the very wealthy Democrats, moderate Democrats, who have been able to hold their property based on that.
Yeah, I am for capitalism. 100%. And I believe that that's really the only thing we have that continues to allow us growth and prosperity. Without it, we will live a socialist lifestyle. And so, I think things need to be more attainable. I think homes need to be more affordable. I think communities need to be driven by people's desire to want to not only live in a specific geographic location, but also to want to provide that geographic location with opportunity through businesses and other things.
But what you're speaking of is not a priority in this country right now. What is the priority is the illegal immigrant and the movement of it, and everybody telling their story of their problems in their country and wanting us to fix their country here.
Shirley, we're gonna have to get Mike on the
us.
other side of the mic.
Oh, Michael's great.
We've been telling him that.
Mike is great. Hey guys, John, we want to say hi. Shout out to my family real quick. Do you guys have any questions? Say hi.
Shout out to Urban Game Changers.
Yes.
What's going on, Urban Game Changers? John Wood Jr. Here with my sister Shirley Husar, my brother Ciaran O'Connor. And this lovely lady, she's been a champion for a long time, fighting the good fight. We butt heads a little bit, but it's always in love.
We always do. It's all good.
You know, hey, look, we all fall short of beauty and the glory of God and Christ and so forth. And so, you know, we're just sinners getting better, a little bit better every day. And I'm very happy to be on that profound redemptive journey with my friend Shirley Husar.
I appreciate that. You know, I think the key thing is that when you know, you grow. When you don't know, you don't grow. So we're going to leave it on that note. When you know, you grow. Thank you guys so much for your support. As you can see, I don't always hang around a bunch of Republicans. You want to say anything, my brother?
Thank you guys for watching. This was an enlightening conversation.
How so?
Well, I think we got 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just an echo chamber, people talking to people who
That's
agree
so
with each
true.
other.
I
So
hate
it's
that.
good to talk to people you disagree with.
That definitely was not a problem today.
No,
Exactly.
not a problem.
Yeah. Next time we'll talk more about Trump.
All right.
Peace.
Peace. Shout out, people. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Thank you, Pam, for moderating. That means a lot to me. Make sure you guys go to urbangamechangers.com. Make sure you're saving your nuggets up because we're going to be announcing how you can sign up and be able to attend the celebration of the African Americans in this country, and how we're going to be talking about the ADOS, African American Descendants of Slaves. It is important that you know what kind of Negro you are. Just like this gentleman was sharing about, he knew what type of Latin community he was connected to and how he aspired to come about who he is through his family and through his lineage. The lineage importances of understanding the value of that lineage and what it contributed is crucial right now. Because if we don't have a clarification of that, they'll think that we are the same as everybody else. And we're not. We are all different, but we all should at least be able to get that point across to the table and to feel good about it. Talk to you soon. Bye.